start by thanking you all for coming. Your time is very much appreciated, and sincere thanks for coming here to feed into this conversation about how we develop music in Lancashire. So the running order, we have a keynote from Jon Collins, who's the CEO of Live. Jon will no doubt paint a picture of what Live does, but it's in essence a national organisation that supports and overarches our live music industries, which I see as a very tangible dimension of Lancashire's music industry. The venues and the places where people consume music are our infrastructure, our hubs for community, and vital places where scenes can develop and communities can grow. So it felt really pertinent to have somebody coming and talking about the live music industry. The theme of today really is things that we need to think about for the music industry to thrive and flourish in Lancashire. And the aim really is, for these meetings and for the Lancashire Music Association, is to profile music as a key part of what it means to be from Lancashire, to profile music and culture, which I truly believe we're really very, very good at, and we could sing more about it. Other dimensions that we require for our industry to flourish, I think embracing technology is certainly one of those. So there's this idea of trying to have the right conversations at the right time, and for us to be thinking about the right things at the right time. We've brought in Rufi Ghazi, who doesn't like to be described as an expert, but I believe that she firmly is. Then at 2:00 we have Tom Salmon. So funding and finance is another important dimension that industry needs to flourish, investment. So it seems very pertinent to hear from someone from Arts Council England, who's the relationship manager for the North, so for us, for the grassroots music initiatives that they have. So it'd be great to try and understand better how we might be able to access funding through those sort of channels. And I think, rather than save this for the time of the talk, I think we need to be making sure that we get at least our fair share of any funding that is available or that we could take advantage of. And as far as I'm concerned, lots of other people's fair shares as well, because I'm concerned with Lancashire, and I want to see Lancashire's places and music scenes thrive and flourish. We've got education, knowledge, how we access knowledge and information and skills. They're also vital to the future, the pipeline, and even people who are, successful and practicing and doing things in the industry. We need to keep developing and replenishing our knowledge, because the industry is a very dynamic environment and it's always changing. So we're going to look at some of the things that we do in Lancashire and the opportunities that, even if they don't relate to you specifically, it's great to be able to know where you can point people at different stages of their career when they need to find things out. But certainly the Lancashire Music Association, it's one of our aims to connect knowledge to Lancashire and to facilitate that process. Accessibility is a vital dimension of growing a healthy music industry. We'll be hearing from Maya Barker. She contributed to writing the charter, the Accessibility Charter for Attitude is Everything, which is a leading organisation, I think seen as such in the world, for making venues more accessible. So it would be great to hear from Maya Barker about her insights and the work that she's doing. The idea that when you're starting out, how do you know what to do? So in one sense, we have, the education infrastructure in Lancashire, but it's also, I think, great to try and connect people to people who have had success, are enjoying success, who are actually doing the job now. So we've invited Stephen Hull from a band called Massive Wagons, who are very much a Lancashire success story. And I'll be interviewing Stephen, asking him, to sort of reveal a bit about the processes and how they've attained the success. The achievement of 3 top 10 albums in recent years, I think is a good metric, and they've been doing a lot more than that. So the thought that, how do you do that? Well, we should ask someone who's done it, and that's what we're doing today. Here also, I think building networks and uniting and working collaboratively gives us greater advantage. It's something that we can easily do. It's not something we do habitually, but we are stronger together. And I think trade associations such as Live clearly demonstrate that, because they're able to leverage and have powerful voices. But I think, we're here, the Lancashire Music Association, I think almost everyone here is a member. And there are many more members who couldn't come today, but we're going to film these knowledge, in essence, what are knowledge resources, so we can share these through our sites. Thanks all for coming, and I'd like to hand you over to Jon Collins for a talk, and we'll have a Q&A after around 20 minutes of Jon giving us his wisdom and perspective. Thank you. Jon Collins.
Afternoon. Thanks, Tony and the board, for inviting me here today. Not least because, as you can tell from my accent, I didn't have to travel that far, about 50 minutes from the house to get here. But I would have traveled a lot further, because it's hugely important that as a sector, live music and music generally is organised locally, is engaging with policymakers, is making its case, so that we're not dismissed as the arty types, the fun people who will just they'll find a way to get by. And if times are tough, remember the advert during lockdown, just retrain as a data entry person. That's fine. So, we've come a long way from that advert, which was probably the nadir of our relationship with government, to actually building something that is a much more promising. But, lobbying, which is basically what I do for the industry, is attritional, and it needs to happen at every level, and it needs to happen all the time if you're going to make incremental gains. So what I'm going to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so is, what are we working on? Who are we representing? A bit of a diversion to Liverpool, because I've just become the chair of the Liverpool City Region Music Board, and I think there are lots of opportunities for us to work together there. And then some final thoughts, which hopefully will maybe provide a platform for your discussions later on this afternoon. So first of all, some numbers. The UK live music sector is smashing all records while also being completely in crisis. And that's been the case post-lockdown. The bigger the artist, the bigger the venue, the bigger the ticket price, the faster it sells. And then conversely, we all know grassroots artists who are just starting out, the challenges are there. And fundamentally, that's been caused by, as a pincer movement we've all felt post-lockdown, the cost of production, the cost of us putting shows on, tours, festivals, just rising 30, 40% year on year, as we had Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the Liz Truss disastrous budget pushing interest rates up. And they, in combination and separately, put lots of inflation into the supply chain, which just meant everything became more expensive. And then you combine that with the supply chain being messed up by lockdown, everybody wanting to be out at the same time, putting real pressure on everything from, splitter vans to security personnel. It just made everything more expensive. And, we haven't seen things cool off that much, if at all. And then we've had the 14 years of austerity, the year of the government that's followed on, the challenges they're grappling with, the state of the economy, the pressure on disposable income. And fundamentally, that, as we see it, has meant that people's capacity to take risk has at both, oh, there's me, hello, just in case you didn't realize. But that, the capacity to take risk, be that, the the musician that wants to have a career, the venue with its 0.5% profit margin, the festivals with the insane economics of putting on a festival and the profit margins in single digits that you have there, or the audience member that likes to go and experience the new. And one of the trends we've definitely seen is people taking those, if that ticket used to be £8 and it's now £12, £14, that's putting them into a position where they're thinking, well, actually, if I save 2 or 3 of those, I can then have a £30 ticket, which is more of a guarantee that I'm going to enjoy that night. It's not what I want to do. I love to experience the new. I love to take those risks of going to see that band that I know very little about because I trust the venue in what they curate. But actually the pressure on disposable income is mitigating against that at the same time as we're seeing the pressures of production, which is why, 2023, 125 grassroots music venues closed. It was about a quarter of that last year. It's running at somewhere between around 1 a fortnight-ish at the moment, from figures from Music Venue Trust. Those pressures can continue and are very real. But then at the same time, for 2023, total value of live music in the UK passed £6 billion for the first time. So 6.1 billion, 35% up on 2019. So the last proper year before lockdown. So at a headline level, great, we have roared back. You dig into those numbers, 55% up in concerts, only 1.2% up in festivals. And that's your first clue as to what's happened there with those major artists putting on those stadium level shows being the real driver of economic growth. We're just putting the 2024 numbers together, and it's basically Taylor Swift and then everybody else sort of added on. She is just such a significant part of that picture. It's hard to credit, but you play multiple stadia nights, it starts to rack up, particularly as third number for you. Every 10,000 people at an arena show spends £1 million in the local economy. And so, we use that. It's about £250,000 for 10,000 people at a festival, the number lower, because obviously festivals are more contained, so the spend happens more on site. That £1 million is spent in the hotels, the restaurants, the bars, the taxi companies, everything that happens around the venue. And we use that number to remind government that we are very economically significant indeed, and that they should take us seriously, which the good news is they are doing. There's an industrial strategy coming in June. For the first time, that industrial strategy in June, we are in June, this month. It's going to, for the first time, call out the creative industries as one of the 8 engines of growth for the UK for the next decade. And so the idea is within that strategy, government sets out how it's going to remove the barriers to growth for us. And that's everything from how we move international talent in and out of the country to how we support the grassroots so that the talent pipeline, both on and off the stage, is healthy. We all know it's under pressure at the moment. So that's really the key challenge for live. We were formed during lockdown as a response to the industry closing us down. Because prior to that, to be honest, music felt a bit too cool to hang out with politicians. We all remember the Cool Britannia era and some of the negative feedback that came with that. So really, as an industry, it was sort of, well, we'll keep ourselves to ourselves. We don't really want to get involved with policymakers. Then they closed us down and we realized, no, we do need to organize. We need to have a voice. We need to be effective. So 15 organizations came together. Music Venue Trust, British Association of Concert Halls, National Arenas Association, giving you that view for the venue side of things from grassroots through to, Co-op Live. And then you've got the organizations that represent artists, managers, promoters, both the independent promoters and the Concert Promoters Association, which is your Live Nations, AEG, SJM, Kilimanjaro, etc., through to ticket retail, production, light, sound, and then my 2 favorites at the end, the Association of British Orchestras and the Association for Electronic Music, which shows that we span by genre as well as function, as well as size. So I have the joy of knitting that board together, and then coming out with a single view that we can present through to government. And beneath the board, we have 5 expert groups that help us to think about what are the current demands, where are the pressures, where is the need to act. And they are festivals, green, touring, venues, and workforce. There are 5 strands of activity. And I'll just briefly explain a bit about what each of those does. So in festivals, we're bringing together 2,000 caps, little independent festivals with Leeds, Reading, and Glastonbury, and everything in between, and talking about common challenges around things like venue safety, protecting our customers, tackling spiking, for example. We're also talking about with government about developing a tax relief for festivals. I mentioned how the economics of festivals are so challenged. You put in a year's worth of effort on the hope that you're going to deliver a very profitable party for 3 or 4 days at some point at the end of that work, which is now increasingly at the whim of the climate as to whether you'll get the bar spend. You'll even be allowed to put people on site when you want. You'll even be able to build the venue, the stages at the pace you need to. All of those things have been affected by the climate in the last year. But they do all of that. And then at the end, they're thinking if we've got a built-in profit margin of maybe 3 to 5%, now, anybody with any financial nous will say, go and put your money, your effort elsewhere, if that's what you're bothered about, is a return on your capital, because that's a crazy number. But actually, they do it because, like everybody in this sector, they're passionate about music, they love that experience. When you've got all those people together in a tent or in a field, and the song drops, and we all respond as a group. That's what they live for. That's what they live to deliver. So actually, why shouldn't there be a tax relief for the festival organizer that bears all of the risk up front to help them to put some liquidity into their balance sheet? There's lots of tax reliefs for other parts of the creative industries. We're having a conversation now with government about can we create one for festivals, and that was at their instigation. So I'm optimistic that that could turn into something. Something else we do at live festivals is give a platform to our experts. So I know we're going to hear from Maya. Maya, we've been pushing the charter, the Attitude is Everything charter, very strongly in our festivals group, and hopefully will help you to deliver record numbers on that one this year. Green cuts across everything that we do. We all know we need to deliver on our sustainability goals. As I just mentioned, we're already being impacted by the climate crisis. So within our Live Green group, we bring together those venues, festivals, artists, managers, promoters, agents, and we talk about what can we do together to reduce our emissions. And that can be commissioning our own research, for example, on what's the best reusable cup to use at your venue, which I thought was going to be quite a simple thing to answer and disappeared down a rabbit hole for 18 months. Came out the other side, though, with something workable, so that's available on our website. But then we also work with A Greener Future on their work on low-emission festivals and how we wean ourselves away from diesel generators and have increased grid connectivity and battery usage. And we've also developed a series of clauses that we've given to agents to put into artists' contracts to bring sustainability from being something you may consider in your rider to actually something that's much more central to the conversation. So how do we, make sure there's no single-use plastic? How do we have expectations of the venue? How do we ensure that the tour bus engine isn't idling outside the venue? Lots of sort of practical steps that can be applied. The clauses make it more central to the conversation. Our live touring group is another area where we're working very hard with government at the moment to basically unpick the mess from Brexit and the fact that that has created such a barrier, particularly for artists who don't have the finances to employ the talent and resource to overcome bureaucracy now that there is around touring, the carnets, cabotage, 91 80-day Schengen restrictions about how much time we can all spend in the Schengen area. This government recognises that needs to change because that contributed to about 74% drop in the number of tours, dates that were happening in the EU post-Brexit. Only about a 20% drop in value, which shows that the bigger artists were still getting out there. It was the smaller artists that were suffering the most. But we've worked with government. They made a manifesto commitment to sort this out. You may have seen there was a UK-EU summit on May the 19th. They talked at that summit and in the official papers that came out afterwards about working together to support the creative industries. And we know that beneath that what they're looking at are a series of proposals we've been working on how we make it easier for our people to get into Europe, our merch, our kit, etc. So we're hopeful that that's going to work. There's also issues though bringing people in. If you've got any promoters here, you might be aware that the new ETA that we've introduced, which is the UK equivalent of the ESTA, means that everybody coming into the country now needs to pay their £16 and declare that they have no criminal convictions, which is not, people were supposed to do that previously, but didn't. What that means in practice is you've got artists that have come in and toured here successfully many, many times, sat on the sofa laughing with Graham Norton, who are now not able technically to come in on an ETA and therefore have to apply for a visa. The last government changed the latitude around the visa for officials, so they now have to see it very much as a black and white thing, which means you then have to go to an appeal. There's no time scale for an appeal, which creates huge uncertainty. Now, you can't apply for your ETA until at most 3 months out from when you want to come into the country. That show has probably been on sale for 6 months, 9 months before we even get to that point. That, as a risk for promoters, is ridiculous. Government wants us to deliver economic growth, so one of our asks of them is, let's make this system fit for purpose. We're not asking you to change the rules on how people get in, but let's have a process which allows us in good time to understand that they can come in, so we can make those multi-million-pound investments in bringing them into the country to delight tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Our live venues group is there to really think about the bricks and mortar, the challenges of operating. You may be aware of Martin's Law, which came about after the tragic events outside Manchester Arena, the Ariana Grande concert. That is going to have an impact. It won't have any impact until the middle of 2027 at the earliest, because that's when the government have said it's the earliest point it's going to come in. We're working with them on the guidance to try and ensure that the requirements of that law align with what we already have to do in terms of our complying with our licenses and our operational practices, so that it's something that is sympathetic to how we trade and doesn't jar or conflict. And then live workforce is our people strand, and that's where we work with organisations like Attitude is Everything, PIPA, which is Parents and Carers in the Performing Arts, CISA, which is the new Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority, to look at how do we shape ourselves as an industry? How can we look at ourselves and go, we are the most welcoming, supportive industry we can be, so that there are opportunities for people from all walks of life, all parts of our communities, and once people are in, that we give them opportunities to develop those careers and have the most fulfilling career they can. There's lots more information on all of those groups on our website, livemusic.biz, and you'll also find an archive of live talks there which cover a lot of the topics that I've just mentioned. The biggest single thing we're doing at the moment, and as a direct response to the grassroots crisis, is we've developed the Live Trust, which launched in January. It's our charitable arm, and the idea is that with the trust, any show in the UK of 5,000 capacity or more, that tour pledges £1 from each ticket to come to us, to then be given out to programs in support of grassroots artists, venues, promoters and festivals. And we only launched in January. We've just passed 800,000 in pledged tickets. The first show that carries the pledge is happening in Glasgow later this week, when Pulp take the stage. And it's been wonderful to see an eclectic mix of artists, from Pulp to Diana Ross, Mumford & Sons to Lynyrd Skynyrd, saying, yeah, we'll do this. And actually, we've got to 800,000 very quickly. We're talking with some stadia-level artists for next summer that would really start to multiply that up. And I'm hoping that we're going to have, in the realms of £5 million to give out next year in support of venues, artists, promoters, festivals. So that's exciting, but that's building a whole other sort of structure alongside what we do as live. We're doing loads in Liverpool. You can read about that on the website. I'll just wrap up by saying, I think events like this really are important, and organisations like the LMA are the front line to all of those issues I've just talked about and finding solutions to all of those issues. I was asked, what does the scene look like in Lancashire going forward? Well, I'd say it's in your hands to decide that. Absolutely in your hands. So, what I've seen for Live, what we've been doing in Liverpool is organising, coming together, giving people networking opportunities, but then crucially identifying, what do we want to tackle? What are our priorities? Is it night buses? Is it opportunities for people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds? Okay, let's evidence what we need. What can we do? What do we need policymakers to do? And then we can go straight to Steve Rotherham to talk about how we make those things happen. So I would say talk, get your message right, and then act. Thank you.